Hello and welcome to this inaugural episode of Talking Point Virtual Series. I'm your host, Darrell Pinto, and the co-chair of the Refugee Jobs Agenda Roundtable, a working coalition of governments, settlement agencies, and corporations collaborating on helping refugees find meaningful work. I see we have audiences from all across Canada and including one person from Afghanistan, so welcome. Talking Point is brought to you by New Canadians TV. New Canadians is an information network for newcomers and would-be immigrants to Canada. You can visit their website, newcanadians.tv, or their YouTube channel, where this session is currently being live streamed. This series, Talking Point, will cover topics related to immigration, multiculturalism, diversity, and inclusion. Today's episode is Canada's response to the Afghan crisis. So welcome and thank you for the audience members for joining us. Those who are attending via Zoom will be in for a special surprise from New Canadians. So stay tuned to the very end. I want to remind the audience that this is an interactive event, and I encourage you to type your questions via the Q&A tab on Zoom or the live chat box if you're watching on YouTube. You can also like questions submitted by someone else. The more audience likes a question gets, it'll get pushed to the top of my screen, and it's more likely that I will ask it of the panelists. So let's get started. I am excited to welcome four amazing panelists. Wendy Cukier, founder and director of Ryerson's Diversity Institute and co-founder of Lifeline Afghanistan. Vera Dodic, manager at the Toronto Newcomer office at the City of Toronto. Neela Hassan, former Afghan journalist and currently a PhD student at the University of Waterloo. And Sajida Habib, founder of the Salaam Foundation. So why don't we get things started off by having each one of you briefly introduce yourselves. So tell us a bit about what you do and what your connection to Afghanistan is. And Neela, maybe I'll start with you.
Thank you, Darrell. Thank you for having me. I am Neela Hassan, and my connection with Afghanistan is that I am from Afghanistan. I am an Afghan refugee in Canada. I came to Canada in 2019, and currently I'm a PhD student. I'm focusing on the intersection of immigration status with domestic violence. And yeah, that's all about me.
Great, thank you. Vera?
Thank you, Darrell. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel and this very important conversation. Especially thank you for putting the spotlight on the Afghan crisis and Canada's response. I currently manage the City of Toronto's Newcomer office. And our role at the office is to facilitate and coordinate implementation of the City of Toronto's Newcomer strategy that Council approved the first time in 2013, and just very recently, a few months ago, a new iteration of the strategy was approved by Council. In addition to the strategy implementation, we are also responsible to implement some other strategic policies related to immigration. And one of those is the city's refugee resettlement program, which was established in the late fall of 2015 in anticipation of Syrian refugee arrivals. The program was active throughout late 2015 until early 2017. And late this summer, in late August, the refugee resettlement program was reactivated to support the resettlement of Afghans.
Wonderful, thank you, Vera. Sajida, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Sajida Habib. I am the founder of Salaam Foundation. A little bit about myself. I was born in East Africa, raised in Pakistan, and have been here for umpteen years. Salaam Foundation is a nonprofit organization based in York Region. We've been in place since the last couple of years, especially with COVID in place. We've been helping single mothers, giving basic necessities to, and learning tools like laptops. We've been helping food banks, shelters, women's shelters, soup kitchens, mental health for, especially with moms who had a lot of trauma. I was involved with the Syrian crisis many years ago, and when the appeal went out for used clothing for Afghan refugees, my team was really willing to help, and we put the appeal out, and that's how the whole thing started.
Wonderful. And we'll hear more about the efforts of not only the Salaam Foundation, but other similar organizations.
Absolutely.
And Wendy, yourself?
Sure. My name is Wendy Cukier, and I'm a professor in the Department of Entrepreneurship and Strategy in the Ted Rogers School, and I lead the Diversity Institute. And I'm joining you from the unceded territory of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. And I say that as a reminder, not just that we're all working on truth and reconciliation, but in fact, almost all Canadians are settlers. And in the city of Toronto, half the population are newcomers. And in fact, many of us are the children of refugees. So I got involved 1979 with Operation Lifeline, which resettled Indo-Chinese refugees in part as part of my father's legacy. And then again, in 2015 with Senator Almidvar, I was one of the co-founders of Lifeline Syria, and I led the Ryerson University Lifeline Syria Challenge, which mobilized Canadians to sponsor Syrian refugees across the country. And then about a year ago, we started working through our project with the Future Skills Center and the Ismaili Council on looking at pathways for refugees, because the Ismaili Council was focused on refugees from Afghanistan already in Turkey, in India, and elsewhere. And so when the crisis hit in August and we started getting questions, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I spoke to Senator Almidvar. One of the people who reached out to me was Hila Taraki and Sally Armstrong, the journalist, and we created Lifeline Afghanistan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. Now, I want to underline for the audience that this conversation will not be about politics. There's enough political punditry happening these days. Rather, it's going to largely focus on the humanitarian aspect of the Afghan crisis, on Afghan refugees, both already arrived and anticipated to arrive in Canada. Our government, the federal government, has committed to resettling 40,000 Afghans through the end of 2023. At present, almost 3,000 Afghan refugees have arrived, and an additional 5,000 are expected to get here in the next 5 months, although my information may already be dated. So Vera, can you help paint the picture for Canadians of the demographics of the Afghan refugees who have already arrived in the GTA, and also the conditions in which they typically arrive?
Thank you for that question, Darrell. I first should clarify that the city does not have a direct role in refugee reception. So we are not at the airports, we are not at the reception centers. Our role is about coordination, facilitation, communication, and information exchange. So this means that we work very closely with agencies that provide direct services to the arriving refugees. And this includes reception services, whether at the airport or which the Polycultural Immigrant and Community Services provides, or at the reception refugee assessment refugee assistance programs, program services, such as costly immigrant services for the GTA, for Toronto region. We also work very closely with many other agencies that are providing settlement services to the resettled refugees after they move into communities. We have been meeting since late August very, very frequently and are in almost daily communication. So we have a great knowledge about the arriving refugees, about those that arrived, and about their profile. So what we know is that close to 3,300 have already arrived to Canada. So that's a national number. And out of that number, close to 2,800 are in their final destination community. Around 1,900 are in Ontario, and out of the 1,900, 900 are in Toronto proper. The proportion of Afghan refugees settling in Ontario and in Toronto is a bit higher than what regularly happens and what happened with Syrian refugees. And that's very likely related to the fact that the largest Afghan community in Canada is in fact in the GTA. There are, according to the 2016 census, there are 84,000 Afghans nationally. 42,000 live in the GTA and 20,000 in Toronto. So it is always for any newcomer, and especially for someone that comes from such traumatic circumstances with a moment's notice, it is important for them to have that connection, and they feel more safe, more secure, and tend to go to areas where there are already people that they can relate to. As far as the profile, we do know that there are many children. Almost half of those that already arrived are below the age of 18. And then about the profile, recently there was an assessment of more than half of those aged 16 and above that are in Toronto. About their English skills and their educational background, etc. So what was established is that they have very good English skills and they have good educational background. More than half have bachelor degrees, in fact, or higher. This may be partly because that initial resettlement effort focused on those that worked very closely with the Canadian government in Afghanistan, and this profile may change as the resettlement efforts continue. Because of how the situation quickly escalated in Afghanistan, many arrived to Canada with no belongings, with only their clothing on their back, destitute.
And Vera, for the benefit of the audience who may not be aware, because we're in the COVID situation, these arriving refugees, how are they being quarantined, if at all, when they do arrive here?
Absolutely, that's a very good point. So they spend the initial 14 to 16 days being quarantined in hotels that are near the airport. They receive their first vaccine there. They are also tested for COVID-19. And then towards the end of their quarantine period, they also receive orientation, and they are interviewed about where they want to go, and provided their SIM cards. They are provided healthcare as it is needed, and then from there on, they are directed to refugee assistance providers.
Thank you very much, Vera. I do want to remind the audience that you can type questions via the Q&A tab on Zoom or the live chat box if you're watching on YouTube. Neela, I want to come to you next. And you mentioned you are originally from Afghanistan, now in Canada. Can you maybe share your journey? I know it wasn't a straight line, but tell us about that life journey from there to here.
It's a long story, just to say it in advance. So I came to Canada in 2019. I came as an asylum seeker, crossing the Roxham Road border irregularly. Before that, I was a Fulbright scholar in the US. I was doing my master's in communication and development. And because of the things that happened back home, and also because I couldn't extend my visa in the US, I had to come to Canada. Now, a little bit about my background in Afghanistan. I have bachelor's in journalism, and I was a journalist in Afghanistan. I was also working with the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs for almost 3 years. So when I came to Canada, I had this North American bachelor degree. I had a very good work experience. And when I was coming to Canada, I thought the hardest part for me would be to cross that border to get my status. And after that, I'll be able to start my normal life. But things weren't the way I anticipated. Turned out that crossing the border was the easiest part of my journey. After getting my status and getting my work permit, the real problem started then when I wanted to get a job, when I wanted to continue the career that I had. And that's one of the things that I want to discuss in this panel, that sense of belonging. You know, it's very important for every refugee. As Vera said, a lot of refugees, Afghan refugees who are coming, they're coming from a very good educational background. They have work experience, and it's not only about survival. They're coming here. Yes, the initial goal is to survive and to be safe, but what happens after that? They need to have a normal life. They need to be able to work towards their dream and to have that sense of belonging, that they're contributing to the society and they're an active member of the society. And what happens actually in the field is that a lot of refugees are not given those chances. Although they know English, although they have a very strong educational background. As much as I don't want to use the discrimination word, but we need to accept that there are certain amount of discrimination when you go in the job market to get a job. And even with your immigration status, because there are different categories to immigrants. And it happens that asylum seekers and refugees are at the lowest bottom of that immigration category. So yeah, it's very important for us, for employers, for those who are working with nonprofits, those who are working with the government, and also the public, to give chances to refugees and to immigrants to be able to do what they want to do, to have that sense of belonging. Because if you don't feel home, if you don't have that sense of belonging, that leads to a lot of problems. And one of the major problems is the mental health issues that refugees get after coming here. And then being able to get help in terms of mental health, that's another topic that I don't want to discuss here. But yeah, it's very important to see refugees not only in terms of survival, but also as people who have stories, who have dreams, who have hopes, who have goals, and they need to be given those opportunities to being able to use those skills that they're bringing with themselves.
So Neela, thank you for providing such a stark and honest picture of life on the ground, of coming to Canada as a refugee. Can I ask you what your aspiration is? I mean, if you had your dream, what would you want to be doing here in Canada?
So when I came to Canada, I had a master's degree, and initially I wanted to work with development sector. Because that's where I did my master's. But because I couldn't get the job, then I'm also a feminist, and I have this passion for studying and learning more about feminism, about working for women. And then I decided to do my PhD. So it was kind of changing my path a little bit, but I'm so happy that I decided to do that. And right now, Yes, and when I came to Canada, I was I was introduced to Afghan community in Mississauga and Toronto. And that's where I found out that even though Afghan women are in Canada, that doesn't mean that they're not experiencing domestic violence. That doesn't mean that they're not being abused. And that's where I decided that I have to study more about women's situation and about how the immigration status that they have are impacting and making them more vulnerable to violence and to abuse. So right now I'm doing my PhD, and I'm hoping that in the next 4 years, I'll be able to do more research and to work in the context of immigrant, especially refugee women, and those who are experiencing domestic violence.
Wonderful. I think that's an admirable pursuit. And I wish you the best of luck, Neela.
Thank you.
Sajida, now you mentioned your foundation rallied around the waves of Syrian refugees 2015 and later. Your view on the ground, I'm sure you come across many individuals and families, Afghan refugees coming here. Is there one story, a particular individual or family that sticks out to you that really exemplifies the situation the Afghan refugees are in?
Being on the ground, yes, I've heard so many stories. One particular one that I found it very touching was a young girl, a young woman. I think she's in her late teens or maybe 20. She got onto the plane, the typical pictures that we saw with people just on the floor of the plane. She left her family behind. A friend just took her along, one of her friends. Her family is in Kabul. She's here alone. Her language skills are really not there. She doesn't understand English as much. And when you talk to her, you see the fear in her eyes, being surrounded by, the new community, new language, not really knowing what's going to happen to her. And she's of a Hazara, she's a Hazara Shia, so she fled from Afghanistan, fearing for their lives. Hazara, for those who may not know, Hazara is a minority group that are targeted by the Taliban. I don't know which Friday, but a couple of Fridays in a row, we heard that they were targeting, bombing Hazara mosques and stuff. So she's safer here, but her whole family is back home. So she was so concerned of where she will end up alone, because she may have to share her lodging with somebody. And we took her to our mosque and a few families who wanted to go. And as Neela said, the sense of belonging is huge. And she was so comfortable that she wants to settle in this area. And then one of the best things that happened is one of our own community women offered her home, that she can come and stay. She's got a home, she's alone, and she's offered her home to her. So I remember one time when we took her to the mosque and I introduced her to this lady. Again, we have volunteers who speak Farsi and Dari, so it was easier. And when the woman said, you don't have to worry about paying the rent. We'll figure it out. You go back and study and stuff. And she started crying because she was just so overwhelmed. And you could see the aha in her that, okay, she's in a safe place. So that, and they are more like her. So
That's wonderful, Sajida. Wendy, how about you? Any sort of on the ground stories that have stuck out in your mind?
Well, I guess the worst ones are the ones that we're absolutely helpless about. I'm getting hundreds of emails every couple of days from people in Afghanistan saying, please help me. They've killed my brother. We're in hiding. We need your help. I'm in Afghanistan. I worked with the Canadian government. Please help me. And there is nothing we can do other than give them the website. So there are those stories that are just brutal, because we really feel there's nothing we can do at this point in time. I have a PhD student who's working with me, who's also Hazara, who has come to Canada on a student visa, and her family did get out in August and is in Pakistan, but they're stuck. And the same story. She's She did a crowdfunding campaign to try to raise money to get them here. Her sister has been accepted at George Brown College. She has an acceptance, but we can't get her a student visa because the student visa requirement is that you write a letter saying you will return to where you came from, which she can't truthfully say. So, we're working on trying to facilitate the pathways as well as raise money to sponsor people. But obviously for us, a real priority, not to be political, is to get some of those policy decisions made quickly so we can help the people that we can help and, pray for the people that we can't.
Wendy, there's an audience question here that ties to the difficulty you mentioned with your Hazara staff member. And, this person, her name is Numan, or his name is Numan, is checking the IRCC website almost every day to see whether there will be a policy in place for, the group of 5 that exists in every other situation. Well, will that come about? Will that be allowed for the Afghan situation? And to this point, he hasn't found any information on the website. Anything in your purview that says, that is coming soon or never?
We have again, not to be political, but if you think about what happened with the Syrians, think about what we were able to do with the Syrians. 25,000 Syrian refugees were brought to Canada in 100 days. How was that done? Well, partly that was done because we had a prima facie definition that if you were Syrian, you were a refugee. Right? If you were Syrian out of Syria, you were a refugee and we'd come and get you. We didn't have to wait for you to go through the process of being assessed by UNHCR or others. That's a huge roadblock right now because people are stuck and it's very obvious they're Afghan. And from my perspective, they should be designated as refugees, but they haven't got that paper. So that's an issue. The Canadian capacity to process documents is an issue. The caps right now, we know they're going to bring 40,000, but the sponsorship agreement holders haven't had any increase to their caps. So there are a lot of bureaucratic issues that have to be resolved. And there's a new minister in place. The good news is I'm very confident that this government is committed to moving things forward, but the machinery moves slowly. And I think, as I said, I have a real sense of urgency because of all those letters we get on a daily basis. We have to figure out how to get people out of Afghanistan that we make commitments to.
Screen froze a bit.
Oh, sorry.
So Vera.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. And you're gone again. So Vera.
Yes.
I know you said you don't work directly on the ground. You work through organizations like COSTI that are really the front line. But have you heard any stories about individuals or families that has resonated with you and really struck a chord?
Well, like Wendy mentioned, people in Afghanistan are desperate. And we too are receiving hundreds of emails, have received hundreds of emails, in particular in the last couple of weeks. I think people are hearing about the efforts and about what's happening in every region of Canada. And what struck me from these emails that we are receiving is the amount of information that they are providing under destitute circumstances, when it is very dangerous to do exactly that. That tells me how desperate they are. The stories, the amount of fear that they are experiencing and trauma are significant. It's people that are very young, well-educated, either finished their bachelor degrees or studying, and they either worked for the government worked as journalists, etc. And it is heartbreaking to read these stories, and in particular because we are not able to just extract them and bring them here.
Right. It sounds like there's a level of urgency on the ground and sort of a bureaucratic red tape that is still needs to be figured out based on what Wendy was saying. And Wendy, I'm going to let you finish your thought because you got cut off toward the end.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I'm optimistic. I believe that this government is committed. They did it before, and I think they can do it again, but we just would really like clarity because, you know, from my point of view, as everyone knows, private sponsorship is a great way to augment government resources, and it gives people the human capital, the social capital when they arrive that actually helps them be even more successful than if they come with government support. So we're really hopeful, but we're biting our fingernails and waiting.
Darrell, I forgot to mention in response to your previous question that all of those that arrived so far are in fact government-assisted refugees. And that's a different pathway, different outlook, as well as Wendy just mentioned. Part of the reason for that is because of the how quickly they had to be evacuated and brought here. That's different from the Syrian resettlement because Syrian refugees, many of them were outside of Syria already, and it was possible for the Canadian government to screen them and then bring them here. So that's one major difference this time around.
And that's a very material difference, Vera. Sajida, I want to come back to you, and because you're doing a lot of work on the ground, can you share for us, you know, what your organization is doing and what you're seeing in terms of the needs and the sort of the urgent, sort of immediate things that Afghan refugees require that your organization is helping with?
So initially, the needs keep changing. I believe we just received 100 families over the last couple of days in the West End Hotel. So because Costi and Polyculture are now reaching out to us and asking us for more supplies. So we've helped from everywhere, from diaper to formula to essential items to shoes, undergarments, lots of those, obviously new ones, school supplies, because we have 90 kids in York region who started school, who were registered, so we get them school supplies, backpacks were supplied to us. Their cell phones, we got a request for a few laptops for kids or youngsters who are doing online studies. Everything that you'd really need, not in the house sense, but whatever you'd need to survive is needed. The one thing that we've really done successfully, which is the volunteer support that we've given to these hotels. We've mainly worked out of Costi Hotel and also a couple of polycultural. We reached out and we went to the West End hotels and gave them some items. What happens is the volunteers are so dedicated. They were in the hotels for between 3 to 5, 6 hours every day. And we had a few volunteers that are Afghan volunteers, so they speak Dari and Persian, because a lot of, some of them speak fluent English, some have no English language at all. So when we find that we don't have what they need, we would take the numbers down, go purchase it, and drop it off in outside the rooms. What is needed is we have also been like the bridge to other organizations. We get a lot of emails every day, and as Wendy said, similar things that help us out of Afghanistan. We can't do much with that, but we get emails from organizations within the GTA saying they want to help out. So for instance, Avon Hockey Club fundraised for us and got us a lot of essential items that we dropped off. We had a woman send us an email, a message saying that she lives alone. She's opening her house to another single woman who needs support. That's huge. What they're looking for, honestly, is housing. They're stuck because housing is so expensive here. We put a couple of We've reached out to a few realtors to see if we can get something going. They're looking for basement apartments, anything, because staying at the hotels is the families we know have stayed there for 2 months. And unfortunately, there is no, facilities to wash your clothes or whatever. So it is difficult. I would really request to the larger population to reach out to any of the organizations and offer whatever they can, whatever they want to, because I think as Canadian society, we have the spirit of volunteers that we want to help out, but we don't know where to start. So we get a lot of these emails and we'll tell them this is what is needed. Even if it's not monetary, that's fine. You can even volunteer, take them to look at houses, buy cars, take them to a laundromat. Anything is needed. Everything is needed. And your second question, Darrell, was?
No, you've answered the question
Okay.
For me, Sajida, but I'll punt it over to Wendy as well. So with Lifeline Afghanistan, Wendy, how are you trying to rally what's needed with the refugees?
Well, as I said, we're focused on private sponsorship, but in the meantime, we set up with the City of Toronto and the United Way, Vera may have mentioned this, a fund, so people who want to donate can donate, and the money will be channeled to the settlement agencies. As well, with respect to the refugees in the hotels, we have a good relationship with the people at the airport hotels. So 2 examples which kind of make me happy. One was on a Friday, I got a call and they said, the parents are really having challenges because they're in quarantine. Some of them with 2 or 3 children. What could we do? And one of my researchers is funded by Canadian Tire Jumpstart. So she contacted her funder, and the next day 4 Canadian Tire managers showed up with the hotel with vans full of toys. And then on Tuesday, they dropped off 1,500 soccer balls and basketballs. And now Canadian Tire is doing all kinds of stuff across the country. Mohammed Faki showed up with 3,000 hand-wrapped baklava and tea. And on a Friday, I got a call and they said, most of the people at the hotel are wearing slippers and sandals. We need shoes. And I posted one note on LinkedIn, and I said, I want 50 or 60 people to give me 10 pairs of shoes. Like, I don't collect this stuff, new or near new. By Monday, we had 600 pairs of shoes. By Friday, we had 1,500, and I just got rid of some of them. But people ordered brand new shoes from Walmart and had them delivered to my house. One woman had 6 pairs of $400 Italian shoes donated by some store. I couldn't believe how quickly one post generated all of this activity. And that's what makes me very optimistic, as others have said, that Canadians will step up and make this happen.
Yeah, the generosity of Canadians is the optimistic thread in this situation. So everything from basketballs to toys to slippers to shoes to diapers, it looks like anything that can be given or donated is in need. Neela, I want to come back to you. You brought up a point about belonging. Any immigrant or refugee coming to this country is really looking for that sense of belonging. In your particular journey, where have you found the inflection points where that belonging has started to unfold?
I would say I'm still on my journey. I am not there yet, although it has been 2.5 years in Canada. I know that part of that might be because I'm alone here and my family is still in Afghanistan. But I think until early this year, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew what I wanted to do with my life, but I wasn't able to do and to utilize my skills that I had. And I just, there were times that I felt like I was just given this opportunity to live, to be safe, and now I'm safe. So now what? After this, what I'm gonna do with this life that I'm given? And there were times that I felt like I don't think it's worth it. It was kind of losing your meaningful life just to be safe. Yeah, so I'm still on my journey, but after starting my PhD, I think that gave me a little sense of hope that, okay, I'll be able to do what I want to do, although the journey is long. But I'm hopeful that I'll get there. And I'm a refugee, and I know a lot of people in Toronto, in GTA area, who came from similar paths as me. And I'm seeing they're struggling too. It's not only me, and the people that I know, they're all educated. They're all coming from very strong backgrounds, and they're all struggling. And it's just heartbreaking and also disappointing to see that people are given safety, but then they're not happy, because after getting safety and coming here, we are supposed to be happy, right? We are supposed to feel that belonging, but we are not. And I think it's something that it's something that can be done on a social level by people. And I guess the conversations like these are very important in order to make the society more kinder, more flexible, and more open to refugees. Because all we need is just a chance to prove ourselves and to show that we do want to contribute to Canadian society, and we do want to have meaningful life. Because when we are able to utilize our skills, it's win and win. We feel like we belong, and we are also contributing to the society. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, Darrell.
You did. I mean, your experience is your experience, Neela. But maybe I'll punt it over to Wendy or Sajida or Vera, who have been in Canada for a long time. Any sort of tips on how to, so beyond the basic necessities, which is obviously an urgent need right now, to increase that sense of belonging, what would be the tips you would give, not only Neela, but any Afghan refugee arriving here?
Go ahead.
No, Wendy, go ahead. I'll speak after you.
It's really hard to say, because we know people who have experienced trauma respond in very different ways, and it's hard. There's so many individual factors that shape how people view and interpret their experiences. But I think we know one of the key things in Canada is success depends on social networks. And it's one of the reasons why, even though all immigrants are on average better educated than Canadian-born workers, they earn less money, they have poor employment outcomes. If you add race and religion and so on, it's worse and worse and worse. And we know that's true. That is a fact. So what is it that helps some overcome the barriers? And I do think that social capital is really the key, because people get jobs through informal networks, through people who open doors and sponsor and mentor. And I think that, as hard as it is, it's building relationships. Ironically, you don't feel you belong if you don't have relationships. But if you don't have relationships, you will never belong. And so it's trying to get out of that catch-22. And we spend a lot of time trying to help people navigate those issues, especially international students and others, because it makes no sense. It's not fair. There's no question. The barriers are there. Then the question is really, how do people get over those barriers or around them or knock them down? And I do think networks and personal relationships, absolutely fundamental.
Sajida?
As a newcomer to Canada many years ago, the sense of belonging is difficult, especially as a woman of color. Religion, it is. But I actually think, as Wendy said, networking is huge. So these are all newcomers. If we can open honestly, if they can find jobs, that is the biggest thing, and then they'll network through the work. And as Wendy said, and I really see the difference in a refugee sponsored by a government and private sponsorship. We had got a family of private sponsors. We sponsored a family of 6, a Syrian family, and you see that they settled so much more different. Because I guess the support of the people is around. We rallied around them. We took them places. We introduced them to the school. And again, I don't know where that is. Like, I don't know how much the government or the settlement agencies do, or how much they can follow a refugee. Because how long will they follow a refugee for? So if we can, as at the hotels, some of our volunteers have become quite close to these families. They take them out for dinners and stuff. So if we can start to do that kind of stuff, maybe create a relationship with the family while they're at the hotel, and depending wherever they settle. And that is why it would be so amazing if they could settle in the same area that they have lived here for 2 months, because they know the volunteers are from this area. And the second thing, Neela, is, again, I flock to who I know or what I know. So I would go to my community, to the mosque, and yet I don't want that to be a barrier, because sometimes it becomes a barrier where they stay within the mosque, they don't speak the language, they'll stay like that the whole time. So we have to come up with some sort of introduction to the Canadian society, and I really am not sure how, but we have to start. And I'm so grateful, Darrell, that you've put this session together, because I would not, maybe I may know Afghanistan a little bit more because I was in Pakistan and I know they are neighbors. I grew up there. But my husband, who's been here since 4 years of age, may not know anything about Afghanistan or the refugee system or the refugees themselves. So to do more conversations like this, so that people know that, yep, we're all the same. We really are all the same. And Wendy, you said 50% of GTA is either refugees or newcomers. Actually, all of us are, except Indigenous people. We're all new to Canada. So I just feel we just need to be open. And as far as there'll be always some people who will not accept you for who you are. And you just leave that away. And the second thing I will say is that sometimes what I have found is, if I myself don't feel I belong, if I'm going to, or if I'm going to, like with my hijab, I can get a lot of people making negative comments, but if I'm going to go looking for that, it's going to hit me harder. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, if I'm going to have a target at my back saying, oh, I wear hijab, I'm different, then that will make it even worse for myself. So that is some education that we could even give to the new arrivals.
Sajida, you and I have something in common, Pakistan. So I was there many years ago, and I traveled to Quetta, which is on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I got a chance to from the outside, I couldn't go inside, see the camps, the refugee camps. Mm-hmm. It was overwhelming. It was from where I was to the horizon, there was nothing but white tents with a sea of humanity living in conditions that a Canadian wouldn't be able to imagine. Vera, I want to come to you in terms of this sense of belonging. I mean, as a Canadian, anything that comes to mind that would help that glue for Afghan refugees?
Well, my comment would be based on many travels that I had the past a few decades since I've been to Canada, and also as someone that fled my previous country, where I was born under fairly traumatic circumstances. it's not a straight pathway. It's a process. It's a long-term process. And these feelings about belonging come and go depending on what's happening in your life. So I'm speaking from my experience, not as the City of Toronto employee. Family makes a difference. Employer makes a difference. That circle of friends makes a huge difference. But also traveling to many places. There's no other place like Canada. And you realize that when you travel abroad, this is where I feel safe. This is where I want to be. And whether I feel all the time that I belong here or not, to me, it's almost irrelevant because I have my goal. And, Canada accepted me and my family, and we had some opportunities. We were not given many others, but we are happy ultimately.
Thank you for sharing that. And Neela, I hope some of that was helpful to hear. I will share from my own perspective. I immigrated 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago now to Canada. And what Vera said really sticks with me and resonates, which is it comes and goes. Like some days, even today, I feel like an outsider, and other days I feel just as Canadian as everyone else. So it's a situation that we just live with as newcomers.
Mm-hmm. And going back to my previous point is it just came to my mind that another very important thing is the stereotypical image that comes with refugees, with the name of asylum seeker, with the name of refugee. And that stereotypical image make us an outsider, exclude us from the communities. And going back to my previous point, having more conversations, indulging more refugees and asylum seekers in our discourses and in our conversations are very important in order to raise that awareness in the society to deconstruct that stereotypical image that we have about refugees.
Right. Wendy, do you want to say something?
Yeah, the only thing that I wanted to say is, and again, I think about my father's situation, which was quite horrific, and he died at the age just before my 10th birthday. But the thing that is very striking is how successful the children of refugees are in Canada. And when I look at the family that we sponsored in 79, the parents never achieved perhaps what they could have achieved, but the children are remarkably successful. And we, even with the Syrians, we've already seen, that a family of 5 brought their in-laws, brought their relatives, brought their brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth. So it's, overall, I think one of the things that I focus on, which gives me hope, is how well the children do. And I think that it's a big issue now with the schools so disrupted that we don't have access to the schools, which are so important in creating that sense of belonging for young people.
Right. Josie from the audience here is asking about data about the Afghan refugees that, currently 40,000 more, 40,000 less the 3,000 or so that have arrived. Vera, do you have a sense on the kinds of data Costi is collecting in the sense that will it enable employers to be able to match jobs to these arriving refugees? Because 50% of them are highly educated from what you said.
Most definitely. It will also help the Afghans themselves find the right employment, because they will be able to receive the right orientation, to also get information on where those jobs are, how to structure their applications based on their background and where they want to work. So this is all extremely useful information that will help both employers and Afghans themselves.
Thank you. Wendy, I'm going to punt the next audience question to you. And I noticed there's a couple of folks from Afghanistan in the audience, and it's horrific what they're typing in terms of their situation. But the audience question here, Wendy, is if there are Afghans who have fled Afghanistan already and they want to immigrate to Canada, how can Canada help? What's your view on that?
Again, we're still waiting. So the most important thing is to go to the IRCC website. We believe that there will be at least 3 pathways. One will be, for some, will be the economic pathway. They can apply for jobs. There are a number of organizations, Talent Without Boundaries and others, that are looking at employment pathways. If you have skills, we have needs, there are opportunities to come in that way. We hope that we will have the student visa pathway cleared up. And of course, then there's the apply for refugee status and see if the government will select you, or register and try to have yourself put forward for private sponsorship. Those should be the ways that we get people here, but there's no clarity right now on how to do any of that.
There have been several questions from the audience about, it's the generosity of Canadians, but they're reaching out to ask how they can help. So what's going to flip onto your screen in a minute is a list of 7 organizations that if you, do want to donate to help Afghan refugees, you're more than welcome to reach out to any one of these organizations. It includes both Lifeline Afghanistan, Wendy's organization, and Salaam Foundation, Sajada's foundation. And these organizations are across the country. Now, don't worry if what flashes across you goes by too quickly for you to write down. It will also be shared online once the recording has been made live on the YouTube channel.
Can I make a quick comment, Darrell, about donations?
Sure.
In-kind donations are in some situations useful, sometimes they are useful, but what is always useful are monetary donations because they provide flexibility. Financial donations mean that then agencies that are working directly with refugees can purchase items that are needed, the specific items that they know that are very much needed, or can get funding from these donations to deliver services that are needed. So the financial donations are always better because of that flexibility.
Thank you for making that point, Vera. I see Wendy nodding. Sajida, would you agree in your organization as well?
I would agree. However, we have been very successful in getting specific donations. So for instance, the preschool of 5 kids raised $1,500 and we supplied the kids with, we get the list and we supplied them with whatever was needed for a school bag. So paper, whatever is needed inside. Because I really feel definitely monetary donation is important. However, to put the feeling that you've done something, it's sometimes, as I said, we get the list from either Costi or from the rooms themselves, the people staying, that this is what we need. So I would give it to somebody who has reached out and said, how can I help? So we'll say, okay, you bring this, just like the hockey club, they fill 2 vans worth of personal items that is needed. So I definitely agree monetary is needed, but sometimes it's a feeling that, oh, I've done something. Is big. So when we put an appeal out for, we're in the process of putting another appeal out, we get so much stuff that we needed a storage unit for that. So we would just then, and we've got kids sizes for shoes and stuff. So I actually send my volunteers to say, okay, pick these up. Somebody was, okay, I'll donate 10 pairs or whatever. So it's just, both are important because it's a sense of, the sense of having done something when you do it yourself is different than monetary. But of course, monetary donations are always welcome.
Thank you, Sajida. Wow, this hour has flown by fast. I wish we had more time. I want to say to all the audience members who joined via Zoom, I did say there would be a surprise. So all of you will be entered into a draw, and one randomly selected winner will receive a copy of Moving Forward, which is an anthology of immigrant stories published by the Immigrant Writers Association. Gerald Kaledjin, who is the brain and engine behind New Canadians TV, is one of the co-authors of the book, which is also available on Amazon or the Immigrant Writers Association website. So good luck, Zoom viewers. So this talking point was brought to you by New Canadians. And remember, you can watch New Canadians on Omni Television, also on YouTube, or their website, newcanadians.tv, where you can sign up for their monthly newsletter. To get notified about upcoming episodes of Talking Point, you can follow New Canadians on social media channels on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and the Telegram messaging app. On YouTube, remember to hit the bell button to get notified of future live streams. I do want to wrap things up by saying a huge thank you to our panelists, Wendy, Neela, Sajida, and Vera, for sharing your thoughts and experiences today. There's been a lot of commentary from the audience, so thank you. It was very enlightening, and I'm hoping that this journey unfolds as efficiently as possible, and that our government steps up in terms of their policy making to deal with 40,000 who are on the way. So see you all next time, inshallah.